I realized the person sitting beside me had planned for only one of us to walk away from the canyon. We started the trip the way people do when they want to believe their life is finally turning a corner. Snacks stacked between us, rental paperwork in the glove box, and the road opening up like a promise. My travel buddy kept saying this was our reset. A long drive, big views, and no obligations. I remember nodding while watching the desert slide by, thinking I had picked the right person to share it with. At the first gas stop, my travel buddy insisted on handling everything: fuel, windshield, a quick check under the hood, like he wanted to look capable. I stood near the doors and stretched my legs, feeling grateful for the quiet. He waved me off when I drifted closer and said, "I have it, relax, enjoy the trip." I listened, because that is what you do when someone acts dependable and you want it to be true. By afternoon, the canyon signs started appearing, and the air changed, drier and thinner, like it had been waiting for us. The RV felt bigger on those roads, louder, like it took effort to keep it in the lane. I mentioned it, and my travel buddy said, "It is just the wind, these rentals drive like a box." He laughed, and I laughed with him, even though I kept both hands tight on the wheel. The descent started smooth, a long slope with guardrails that looked like an afterthought. I tapped the brake once, then again, expecting that slow, reliable pullback. The pedal sank farther than it should. I tried again and felt a soft give, like stepping into mud. My travel buddy looked over and said, "You are riding it. Stop doing that." I said, "Something is wrong with it." And my voice came out smaller than I wanted. I eased into a lower gear and the engine complained, and for a moment it held, then the speed crept up anyway. The pedal kept dropping, and the RV did not answer. My hands started to sweat, and the steering felt light, like we were floating, like the tires had less to grab. My travel buddy leaned back, calm, and said, "You are panicking. Just steer." The guardrail to my right started flashing by in short bursts. I tried pumping the brake the way people always say to do, and nothing changed except the sinking feeling in my stomach. I reached for the hazard button and my finger missed it twice. My travel buddy said, "Keep it straight, do not jerk it." I said, "I cannot slow it." He did not raise his voice. He just watched the road like he was waiting for something to happen that he already understood. A curve approached, sharp enough that I could see the canyon beyond it, a slice of open space that made my throat tighten. I aimed for the inside line and felt the RV lean, then slide, and the tires screamed like they were trying to talk. My travel buddy braced one hand on the dash and said, "Easy, easy." I remember thinking how steady he looked, like he had practiced being steady. The guardrail buckled when we hit it, and the world tilted hard. The drop was not a clean fall, it was a violent tumble, metal groaning, cupboards exploding open, our bodies thrown against whatever was closest. I felt my shoulder go numb, then hot, then numb again. I tasted dust and plastic. When we stopped, the RV was angled on its side, pinned against rock, and everything inside had shifted into a single crushed corner. My travel buddy was hanging from his seatbelt, breathing fast, eyes wide, but still awake. I tried to unclip my belt and my hand would not cooperate. My travel buddy got free first, and I heard him scramble, boots on broken glass. Then the side window gave and light flooded in. He did not come back for me. He did not even speak. I managed to say, "Help me," but it came out as a rasp. He climbed out, and the next sound was his footsteps moving away over stone, getting smaller, like he had decided the story was already finished. Minutes stretched into something else, a heavy waiting where every breath felt like dragging air through cloth. My phone was somewhere, buzzing faintly, then silent. I could hear distant voices above, not close, then closer, and I started making noise the only way I could, by tapping my heel against the floor panel. When a ranger finally appeared in the shattered opening, he said, "Stay with me, we are getting you out." I wanted to tell him someone left me, but I could not shape it. They pulled me out with straps and careful hands, and the sky looked impossibly clean, like it had no relationship to what had happened below. I kept asking for my travel buddy, and no one answered directly. Later, on a stretcher near the road, I saw him standing with a group of people, phone held high, face twisted into grief that did not fit his eyes. He noticed me and froze, then forced his mouth into a different expression and rushed over saying, I thought you were gone." It sounded rehearsed. In the hospital, the mechanic from the rental company showed up with a clipboard and apologetic phrases, and the ranger came back with a report and a serious look. They said the brake fluid reservoir was nearly clear, like it had been rinsed out. They said it smelled like nothing, which made no sense. When I finally got my travel buddy alone, I told him what they found, and he said, "Maybe the rental place messed up." His gaze slid away as he spoke, and I understood then. A week later, still bruised and shaking, I logged into my email to find policy documents I did not remember requesting, and a trail of changes made from a device that matched my travel buddy's. I had signed up for extra coverage before the trip because he suggested it, because he said it was smart. In a message thread, he had sent someone a link to a video draft titled, "With my role in it, Grieving Friend Survives Tragedy." I sat there staring at the screen, feeling the canyon drop again, but this time inside me. The first sting felt like a sunburn until the skin on my arm started lifting in little transparent sheets. We arrived at the resort on a bus that smelled like citrus cleaner and tired tourists, and the lobby hit me with cold air and music that never stopped. My partner wanted the wristbands on fast, drinks in hand fast, and I went along with it because the whole point was to stop thinking. The ocean was right there, and every surface looked polished, like no one was allowed to have a bad day. At the pool bar, the staff slid glasses across the counter like it was a contest, and I lost track of how many I accepted because the salt air made everything feel light. The pool boy offered sunscreen and said the sun here bit harder than people expected. I hesitated, and he said, "Trust me, I do this all day." My partner laughed and told me to stop being stubborn. He rubbed it onto my shoulders and arms with quick, confident motions, and the lotion felt thinner than the kind I used at home. It smelled sharp, like something from a supply closet, but the lime and alcohol in my glass covered it. The pool boy said, "Do not miss the backs of your knees," and I let him finish because I wanted to feel taken care of for once. By the second day, my skin started itching under the surface, not like a bug bite, more like heat trapped under plastic. I blamed the sun and the pool and the cheap cocktails, and I kept reapplying because the pool boy kept appearing with the bottle. My partner said, "Look how attentive he is," and tipped him. The pool boy winked at my partner, then looked at me like I was a task. That evening I noticed small bumps along my forearm, then a tightness around them like the skin was shrinking. I pressed a finger to one and it turned pale, then red again. My partner said, "You are overreacting, it is just a rash." I tried to sleep and kept waking up to the sensation of warmth spreading in patches, as if the sheets were sandpaper. On the third day, the bumps rose into blisters, and when I moved my arm, the surface pulled like it had been glued wrong. I walked to the bathroom mirror and stared at my shoulders, and the color was wrong, not tan, not burn, something mottled and raw. I called my partner in and said, "This is not normal." My partner frowned and said, "Maybe you are allergic to the chlorine." I went to the resort clinic, a small room beside the spa that smelled of menthol and air freshener. The nurse looked at my arms and face, and the calm left her eyes. She said, "Did you use any products from the pool staff?" I said, "Just the sunscreen they hand out." She asked to see the bottle, and when I described it, she reached for gloves without explaining why. They wrapped my arms in gauze and told me to stay out of the sun, out of the pool, and out of the ocean, like the vacation was over, and I was the only one who had not agreed. My partner argued at the front desk about refunds, and I sat in the lobby trying not to move. The pool boy walked past with the bottle in his hand, and I said, "What is in that?" He paused, and his expression stayed flat. He said, "It is what you asked for." I told him the clinic said it was burning me, and he leaned closer and said, "Everyone wants paradise. No one wants the cost." My partner stepped between us and said, "Back off." The pool boy shrugged and walked away, and the smell that followed him made my stomach turn. Back in the room, I searched my phone for the words the nurse used: chemical irritation, solvent exposure, contact burn. I opened the resort app and found a maintenance report link that should not have been public. It listed a drum used for stripping paint from metal rails, and the item code matched the label I remembered on his bottle. My partner said, "Send it to my email, we will sue." By morning, other guests were in the clinic, arms wrapped, faces swollen, walking like each step hurt. A couple from the next building said the same pool boy insisted on applying it, and he told them it was premium. In the breakfast line, I heard someone whisper, "My back is peeling." The staff avoided eye contact and kept offering free drinks like sugar could cover a burn. Security finally blocked access to the pool area, and the manager called a meeting in a conference room that felt like a courtroom without a judge. The manager said, "We are investigating an incident involving unauthorized materials." People yelled over each other, and I kept my arms folded so no one would stare. My partner said, "Where is the pool boy?" The manager said, "He is no longer on site." Later, I learned he had taken solvent from maintenance and poured it into sunscreen bottles, and he had done it for weeks, not for money, but for punishment. A staff member who felt guilty told me he hated the crowds and the trash and the way tourists treated the beach like a prop. He wanted lawsuits, headlines, and ruined reviews. When I heard that, the resort lights felt like they were laughing. The last time I saw my son, he was carrying a plate of soft serve toward a hallway marked crew only. We booked the Alaska cruise because it promised calm water and family bonding, whale sightings at dawn and lectures about glaciers in the afternoon. My teenage son rolled his eyes at the brochures, but seemed excited about the teen lounge and midnight buffet. I told myself this was our reset after a year of drifting apart, phones between us even at dinner. The ship felt big enough to swallow our distance. The first 2 days went the way cruise commercials do. Cold air on the deck, mountains sliding past like painted backdrops. My son disappearing for hours and returning with stories about karaoke and card games. He mentioned a crewman who worked near the lounge and said, "He knows the real spots on the ship." I brushed it off as harmless talk, just another adult being friendly. On the third night, we met at the buffet just before midnight, trays clattering and soft music filling the room. My son piled fries beside a bowl of soup and said, "He told me there is an exclusive party below deck, only for older teens." I told him, "You are not going anywhere below deck without me." He laughed and said I worried about everything. I stepped away to grab napkins, and when I came back, his chair was empty, his plate untouched. I assumed he had run to the restroom, and I waited by the drink station longer than made sense. I texted him and watched the message send, then sit there unanswered. A server asked if I needed anything, and I said, "Have you seen my son?" The server shook her head and kept moving. The teen lounge was still buzzing, but he was not there. A girl at the console said, "He left with the crew guy, the one with the lanyard full of keys." My chest tightened and I said, "Where did they go?" She pointed toward a corridor marked staff only and said he told my son it was a shortcut. The corridor door had already swung shut. Security met me near the elevators after I insisted, my voice breaking in a way I could not control. An officer said, "We take this seriously. Stay calm." I said, "He followed a crewman below deck." The officer's expression shifted and he spoke into his radio. We walked fast through service hallways that smelled like detergent and metal, past doors labeled storage and galley. In a small monitoring room, they pulled up footage from the buffet area. I watched my son on the screen, laughing at something, then following a crewman with a cap pulled low. They turned a corner near a freight lift, and the image cut to another camera where the crewman swiped a card and opened a door. My son stepped through, and the door closed behind them. The officer said, "That door should not be used for guests." I asked what was on the other side, and he said it led to maintenance spaces near the hull. They tried the same door minutes later and found it locked. A second officer said, "The keycard used there does not match current assignments." The air in the room felt thinner, like the ship had tilted. We searched for hours, crew and security moving in lines through corridors that looked identical, checking laundry rooms and storage bays. I called my son's phone over and over, listening to it ring until it went to voicemail. An announcement went out asking him to report to guest services, and the words echoed through the atrium like a rehearsal for something worse. Passengers stared as I hurried past. Near dawn, they opened a hatch along a lower deck where cargo containers were secured for port. An officer told me to wait, but I followed anyway. The space was colder and louder, engines vibrating through the metal floor. Behind a stack of crates, they found a group of kids sitting close together, wrists bound with plastic ties, eyes wide and unfocused. My son was among them, shaking but alive. He looked at me and said, "He said we were helping with something secret." I cut the ties with trembling hands while officers radioed for medical support. The crewman from the footage was nowhere in sight, and neither were two others who had not reported for shift. Later, in a private room, an investigator told me they had uncovered a smuggling operation using cargo routes between ports, hiding migrant teenagers in the hull and blending them with missing guests to avoid suspicion. The investigator said they counted on parents assuming their kids were at the lounge or the arcade. I sat beside my son and held his shoulder, feeling how close we had come to losing him in plain sight. The cruise continued, announcements about whales resumed, and passengers lined the rails as if the night had not happened. When we disembarked in Seattle, reporters waited, and I realized our vacation would always be measured against that corridor door closing behind him.